I'm going to be talking to you guys today about juvenoia. It is a portmanteau of the words juvenile and paranoia, and is generally used to mean the exaggerated fear of young adults by older adults. So often called the kids these days phenomenon. Generally the idea that once you hit a certain threshold age, I guess, you start thinking that everybody younger than you is a hooligan. So I'll start by talking about ways to rationalize this idea that younger adults are just, or that new things aren't as good as how we were raised, for example. And we tend to use bad science for this. So we can start with things like survivor bias. That is, survivor bias is a statistical fallacy. So the poster example of this being World War II fighter jets with the British Army, that they were being shot down at alarming rates. So they figured, let's put some armor on these fighter jets. And so they put them where they saw bullets, as you can't put too much armor on an airplane. By definition, an airplane is supposed to fly. And then realizing that this didn't cause any more planes to come back, they brought in the mathematician Abraham Wall, who realized that they needed to put armor on the places that they weren't seeing being hit, because those were the places where a plane would be hit and not come back. See, if a plane is coming back, by definition, they were able to, they were hit in a place that a plane can survive having been hit there. So a lot of times we'll see things like, they just don't make them like they used to. They don't make music like they did in the 80s, 70s, etc. But nobody really considered that there were some terrible bands in the same genre as the Beatles that we just don't listen to anymore. It's not that music was better back then. It's that we only listen to the good stuff from back then. So something like 100 years from now, nobody's going to be talking about the Pixar film Cars 2 because it was terrible, but everybody's going to be talking about the Pixar film Coco because it's incredible. So a main example that I'm going to be using is Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody. So now we can see selective evidence. This is where you cherry pick data, essentially the reason people still think that climate change isn't a thing. They'll look at a specific subset of data that will support their claim. So they might think something like, that here's some examples, and clearly this supports my claim, and clearly this is an unbiased idea, and obviously I'm right. You know, not considering Like you'll see memes like this all the time, comparing today's music and yesterday's music. These are the lyrics from Bohemian Rhapsody, and these are the lyrics from the musical masterpiece Work. And they'll say, see, this song only had one writer and like a couple of producers. It's better, but it had fewer writers compared to the amount of writers and musicians working on Work. But then they don't realize that you can use a different set of and come up with a completely different conclusion. And like, don't get me wrong, I love Bicycle by Queen, but as you can see, there's this idea that we're better in the past because we either only look at the things that were better in the past, or we only look at the things that have survived until the present day. So we tend to think things like, back in my day, people didn't have as much anxiety, for example. It must be the iPhones. It's clearly not the fact that school is more stressful than it's ever been, and most people, most millennials, are crushed under a lot of debt by the time they're 23. It's clearly the iPhones. So the thing is that the truth will enlighten you, or that's the theory anyhow, on how Juvenoia isn't really an idea that it's not something that you can consider absolute truth. Because first of all, it happens in every single generation. If you look back at the parents of our parents, they thought the same thing about their generation that our parents' generation thinks about us. You can start as far back, well, you can start much farther back, but I'm starting at 1872, when a critic wrote something about Charles Dickens, that we do not turn over the pages in search of thought, delicate psychological observation, grace of style, charm of composition, but we enjoy them like children at play, laughing and crying with the images before us. That sounds like something that somebody could have written about the Pixar film Coco. But this is something that they wrote about somebody who's revered as one of the greatest authors of his time, who also wasn't read very much at his time. That's a whole different conversation. You can also see what Plato thought about the written word, this newfangled technology. It will implant forgetfulness in their souls. Clearly, writing things down is the worst thing that could have possibly happened to society and civilization if we listen to the thinker, a very commonly cited thinker. Much like how your calendar app implants forgetfulness in your soul. So here we can see the actual statistics and how the shenanigans, which I love this idea of shenanigans, so violent arrests, pregnancies, alcohol, nonviolent arrest, drugs, dropout rates, and abortion have all gone down in this particular chart. This is showing the difference, the percent difference in each of these things from 1993 to 2013. And you can see that all of these have gone down. Now, interestingly, marijuana has gone up, but also legality of marijuana has gone up. So, again, a whole other topic. You can also see that unemployment in youth and in college students has gone up. A lot of people might try and say that that this is because our generation is lazier than the generations before us. But that's not necessarily the case. As you can see, our education levels have gone up as well, showing that we're not lazier. It's just that while having a high school degree about 100 years ago made you able to get any job, while now having a PhD might make it a bit difficult anyway. Or excuse me, while now even having a PhD, you might have a hard time finding a job. Although, I mean, that's obviously, that might be a generalization. Regardless, you can see that this idea of being afraid of the younger generations is something that not only have we done in the past, but we also tend to incorrectly believe about current generations. So, you know, You say things about this generation, but in reality, this generation reads more, this generation has more education, etc. So there's a lot of ways that we try to, there's got to be a reason why this happens in every single generation, right? I mean, it's not something that's going to prevail throughout several hundreds of years for no reason. So we can say that it's really easy to look at the past through rose-tinted glasses. Just a personal example, I grew up in the Dominican Republic, but I swear when I go back, the food from there is not as good as it was when I was 8 years old. And I'm fairly certain that that is not something that I am the only one who has experienced. When you look back on things, you oftentimes romanticize them and consider them a lot better than they actually were. So it's very easy once you get older to think, oh, these kids' childhoods aren't as great as mine was, but maybe yours was exactly as good. You're just remembering it much nicer than it actually was. Furthermore, by definition, a parent has succeeded in passing on their genetic code, right? So it may have been beneficial for a species to consider anything other than the way that they were raised a threat, as in a way that could threaten the way that their species continues. So understanding that if one internalizes that their upbringing was the best upbringing possible, then they don't want any deviation from that. That if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Although in some occasions it is broke, and you just don't want to fix it. What I'm trying to say is that not all of our childhoods are going to be perfect, and we can't expect any deviation from this childhood that we're romanticizing to be bad. So I have a couple of citations here, and in general, I wanted to keep this as brief as possible because we do have a panel that that I'm trying to lead into. So this idea of juvenile is a very common thread, and so I've asked a couple of different age groups to be represented here, if you ladies would like to start. And I have a couple of questions prepared, and also I'll have that open to the rest of you. So we have, I'd like you ladies to introduce yourselves, and I'm not going to ask you to tell everyone your ages, but the idea is that there's a range of generations represented here.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My name is Imani Atkins. I'm a senior special education major from Georgetown, South Carolina. Good morning. My name is Jamie Rose, social work major from Super Maryland, and I'm a freshman.
Good morning. I am Penny Speeds, and I am currently the interim chair for the Department of Humanities and a 1986 graduate of Bennett.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ariel Cobb, and I'm the Director for Student Success and Retention.
So, the first thing I'd like to ask is that technology has changed a lot in the past couple of years, just in my less than 2 decades of life. And so I'd like to ask you guys how you have seen technology change just in your lifetimes, generally speaking. So yeah, I'd like to ask you guys how you've seen technology change in your lifetime.
So I was really fortunate to grow up in an era where technology was on the uprise. So I remember being in elementary school and using the floppy disk to play like word munchers and stuff like that on the computer programs, and having these really big computer screens that were, I call them fat heads. They were really big, and they were really slow. You could only do certain things. And then obviously as I got through middle school and high school and college, laptops, everyone having, internet access, Wi-Fi everywhere, accessibility to the internet at all times. Now we're in the age of bring your own device, where everyone has some type of device that's connected to a a Wi-Fi spot or plugged in through Ethernet. So I've kind of seen it all kind of transform before my eyes, starting off young to now.
On the early end of this spectrum of technology, I grew up in an age where we were just hearing ideas that were being formulated. And so actually by the time I got to college, we were hearing such words as, information superhighway, which probably none of you have heard technology expressed in such a way. And so for a lot of us coming of age when I did, finally when you got to college, you were seeing computers more. As Ms. Cobb has indicated, early on it was very limited in terms of what you could do. So I have seen it evolve quite a bit in terms of what you have access to today. So again, in that light, I've seen the very early stages of technology to where we currently are now.
Okay, so I think I've seen technology more or less just continue from where it is now. So I started off with like a PC, like a family computer, now up to a laptop. So it's where you can have your own personal space and personal information, and you can have your private life to where you no longer have to share with your family anymore. I agree with Jamie. Starting off in school, we did have like Ms. Cobb said, like the big TV monitors, and like transitioning to middle school and high school, the technology improved.
Right, so seeing technology change as much as it has just in the past decade or so, how do you think your experiences in education, as in just seeing how education has changed because of this technology in general? Me personally, I remember the overhead projectors in elementary school, and then by the time I graduated, there were smart boards in all the classrooms. And I think that there would be more dramatic or different changes for different members on our panel. So I'd like to hear if any of you have thoughts on that.
So one of my degrees is in information technology. That's probably why I'm so eager to answer these questions. So yes, in high school, I remember in social studies, history class or something like that, we had a projector, and our teacher would write feverishly on that with the marker, and we would copy the notes from the projector screen. And then obviously now you have smart boards, you have laptops, projectors. Faculty have their own laptops and projectors they come with just in case technology fails in a room that they're in when they're teaching, because it's so important for them to have it. So we're kind of really reliant on it, as well as coming up in my generation now and getting into the workforce. It's important that you have a set of skills with technology. It's no way to get around it. You have to know how to use Microsoft Outlook, how to manage a calendar, how to type documents up in Word, how to use Excel, how to use PowerPoint. If you don't have those skills, employers are not more than likely not trying to hire you, because that's what they rely on, especially in any arena. So it's like, even if you are just going to be a therapist, you need to know how to type up your notes and documentation for insurance, and it's submitted electronically now. So any profession that you have to learn how to use technology to your advantage. And so obviously going through education with, when I got to college, I went to UNC Chapel Hill, and they had an initiative with IBM where they gave all of the freshmen laptops, and it was yours to keep as long as you graduated. If you didn't graduate, you had to give it back. But it just goes to show how important it is to have technology at your fingertips. They wanted to make sure that you had it, otherwise you were not going to be able to be successful, because no professor takes handwritten work anymore. Everything has to be typed, emailed, submitted online, that type of thing.
I think today, being in my generation, I sometimes ask, how do we ever survive without the technology that we have privy to on today? My early years in school, we did not have the computers, the laptops, you took your notes by hand. Your teachers came in and they actually wrote on a blackboard. There was no such thing as a whiteboard. So students literally had to take time to write their information out, as well as your teachers. And so when I look at how far we've come today, students no longer take notes by hand. You're snapping with your iPhones, so you're not actually involved or engaged in the process of writing in that sense. So yes, we have the ideas, as Carmen talked about, the idea of Juvenovia, whereas we thought what we were doing was so great, back in the late 70s, the 80s. But I think also my generation sees what you have come into the world privy to, meaning when you're born, there's this idea of, without the computers, okay, something probably would go awry. So you entered the world with technology. And so having that, you have not had nowhere near the idea that I have had in regards to when we had to do certain things, because we thought that was all we had, that that's the way it would always be. But again, of course, as the world evolves, we have gained access to so much more. So we are definitely appreciative of that.
So like the different programs, like when I came into high school, like Google Classroom was a big part of my high school career, with having to upload papers and having to look for homework assignments. So like the different programs as we go forward with life, and like now I'm learning about Hawks Learning for math.
So I guess the next question would be specifically here at Bennett, especially Ms. Bees, who not only graduated from here but also works here. And I mean, I know you guys maybe haven't seen Bennett change for as many years, but how Bennett has grown and changed and adapted to these newer ideas, and being a very traditional, or a place with so many traditions and so many years. How you think Bennett may have molded itself into this day and age, if you have any thoughts on that. As it relates to technology and in general.
Okay. As I indicated, I came to Bennett in 1982 as a freshman and graduated in May of 1986. And so having my undergraduate education here at Bennett, and then returning just a short while later in 1988 to join the faculty here at Bennett. And I've now been here, this is my 29th year as a faculty member, so I've been here for quite a while. So when you ask me how I've seen things change, the vision of Bennett is the same, okay, in that the vision has always been to encourage and to educate young women. The way we do that has probably changed because, again, as we've been talking this morning about the involvement of education, the involvement of technology, I think that Bennett has indeed moved with that. Sometimes I think as students you think we've moved a little bit slower than what you think we should be moving in some directions. But at the same time, I think with our vision there, it's the same. But we know that we're working with a different generation of young people. So yes, it sometimes takes those of us who are older faculty members to maybe to grasp some of the newer concepts and ideas. But we have to also remember that if you're working with the new generation of students, you have to move as well, meaning faculty and staff have to also be willing to move so that we are abreast of what's currently going on in society, because the way in which I was perhaps treated as a student may not be the same kind of treatment that our current students might need. So it behooves us, again, to think about who we are currently serving in that regard, no matter if we're talking about being in the classroom or even the opportunities, the organizations that you have access to beyond the classroom are the areas I think that we've tried to address. You know, it used to be, as we talk about Bennett being a liberal arts institution, we were very heavy in the arts, but now, of course, we know as times change, it's more about, you know, STEM. So those of us who are in the area of humanities, we're fighting for our space. And so that's something that's new to us as older faculty members who are in the area of humanities. But we also know that not every student who comes here wants to venture into the area of science, math, engineering, technology. So as much as things change in one area, we also know that other areas have to change too to stay abreast of what's happening around us in the world.
So I've worked at Bennett for about 6 years. I don't have 29 years under my belt yet, but I'll get there one day. I have a different perspective just because I feel like my degree is in technology, and so having to do a lot of research on educational technology as well as technology used in operating systems and businesses and things like that. I think there is a fear of technology by end users from all ages, but more so the older generations, because it moves so rapidly and it goes so quickly. So, you know, you go from having just one app that does this to there being 15 apps on the market that could do the same thing, as well as, you know, now your refrigerator can tell you if you have, you know, you don't have no mayonnaise, or, you know, or if the roast is overcooking. So it's this technology is everywhere, and I think it can be overwhelming to the educational sector as well as just consumers overall. And I think it sits on the back burner of a lot of colleges and institutions. The Department of Technology, it's hard being in IT. It's a very thankless job. So, you know, when you say, oh, the Wi-Fi is not working, and you think it's IT's not doing their job, it's like it's a bunch of issues behind that we have to fix to make sure that that type of stuff is working and that you have access. And it's not as an easy fix as just going to tinkle a little box. So you have to like really do a lot of work. And I think people don't think about it. It's just an afterthought. It's just kind of like, I just want to be able to get on the internet and that's it. And so technology budgets are not as large at institutions, especially not small private institutions. It's not a focus. So if you have a leadership team or a president who's not really into technology, it kind of suffers. It's on the back burner. So that's across all institutions, not Bennett, not to say that that's occurring here, but at A&T and even big places like UNCG, and I have colleagues over there, you know, they struggle to keep up with the pace of technology to give you what you want, but it's also have to be a priority from the institution saying that they want that type of thing. So it kind of moves at the pace of who's ever in charge. So that's my perspective as well.
All right, well, I'd like to ask, I'm not trying to split the panel, but just sort of, I'd like to ask in general about perceptions. So I might perceive differently, and this is where I'm going to use the word perceive too many times, but I might perceive the way that an older generation perceives my generation differently than they think that they might, than they actually think of our generation. So I'd like to, if you guys wouldn't mind, sort of maybe talking about how you might think of a different generation than yours. Not that generations are a very scientific way to divide a population, but just in general, how you might feel that you are perceived by other generations and how you feel that your generation might perceive another.
Okay, so for one, I think I know how older generations perceive our generations. They, you know, think we're lazy, we lack communication skills, and I mean, we do, sort of. And just with like different situations, like I said, communication. So, you know, they sent like a lot of letters and all of that now. Now we have text, we have emails, you know, social media, and I think that's all I have. They think we don't have anything, like, they think we don't have a drive, like we don't want to do anything. So it's like, you get what you like. We don't go above and beyond. Some don't, but then you have others in the pick that actually want to do better for their lives or get out of any situation they're ever in, and they just compare us to the some that actually don't want to do anything or they don't have anything going for themselves.
Wow. I think perhaps at times your generation looks at my generation as, you know, the old folk. We don't know anything. We're set in our ways. They don't understand us. It's a different era, okay, that you're living in, so that's how you view me, or the older generation. And then I think when I looked at Carmen's definition for juvenovia, and I'm sitting there thinking, I don't fear young people, okay? I love young people. I have 2 young ones myself, and then plus I have all of you. So again, I think in terms of not fearing young people, but if young people would see sometimes from our perspective, and then also my generation needs to see your perception as well, and that we can meet somewhere in the middle sometimes on some ideas and some issues would probably be a little bit better, as opposed to me dismissing a younger person or vice versa. But again, I think oftentimes when young people think that older people, meaning maybe your parents, your grandparents, you know, there's going to be some era of conflict because maybe parents are not allowing you to do certain things. Grandparents will come out and just tell you how it is based upon, of course, how they grew up. And then, of course, when young people want to come back at the older generation with their own ideas, we're not always receptive of that. So I think, you know, there are those different perceptions. But in the end, just know that Mrs. Speeds does not fear young people. I love you. And again, I do learn a lot from my own sons. They are both now away in school just as you are. And I miss them very dearly, because there are some days when I'm having issues with my own iPhone. It's like, ooh, how do I do this? I will FaceTime them, you know, look at it so I can, you know and I can understand, so the next time I don't have to interrupt you. So again, there are the things that we do need from you, because as Ms. Cobb has said, technology changes every minute of the day in some instances. So yes, don't think that we don't need you, because indeed we do.
We love you too, Miss Speed.
Okay, so depending on where you look, depending on what timeline you look at, I'm on the edge of when I was born, of being a millennial and also being a generation, what is it, X? No, not X. X is my mama. No, I think it's Y. I'm Generation Y or millennial, and then the students that are younger than you are called Generation Z. So being on that threshold, I think, and I still feel like I'm young. I'm a young professional, okay? So I don't find myself or define myself as old. So I can relate to you in terms of being somewhat hip to the trends and kind of abreast of, you know, current events and things that you go through, as well as I'm old enough, and I do have an old soul because I was raised by my grandmother and mother. So I think that you perceive, I think people perceive me being a young professional as not having the expertise or knowledge or years, and maybe kind of undermined my authority or what I do know. And then from the older generations that I do work with, maybe a little bit of the same, you know, in terms of being young and, you know, being energetic and not necessarily taking me seriously as I should be, given, you know, all of the work that I've done. And then for me, I don't fear young people. I love questions. I love interacting with everyone. I love learning, because it's something that I can learn from each and every one of you. And you can learn something from little kids. I mean, y'all are very honest, so I appreciate that, and it helps me do my job better. So that's kind of my perspective on everything. As far as me viewing the the younger generation, I understand where you're coming from. I also try to meet you where you're at, and realize that you're growing up in an age that's totally different. And so some of the things that I may want you to do, or me and Ms. Spees or our other colleagues how we want you to react, you know, being extremely driven and going hard for your homework and things like that, and finding a way and being really resourceful. You don't really get that because you have grown up in an era where things are just kind of there. So we grew up in an era where we had to figure it out. Like if that paper, your typewriter broke, what you do? You had to go in and write it, right? Or, you know, so some of that gets frustrating, but that's pretty much my perspective on everything.
Well, this isn't really, like, I'm not asking a question in the next couple of words that I'm going to say, but I'd just like to mention about generations as an idea, that they don't exist. You know, like, it's really easy to try and divide sections of the population up into these monolithic things. So millennials do this, Gen Xers do that, Gen Z does this, and that's just not the case. So overall, generations are kind of made up, and I think that the idea of generations, and of course this is completely venturing away from the more factual information that I tried to give you at the beginning of this ACES, that it sort of feeds into this fear of young people. I mean, I guess we've established that it's not really a fear, or that most older generations don't actually fear us. But overall, can you, like, do you foresee any sort of solution to this attempted fake divide between age groups? I'm not trying to put you guys in the spot because I understand this isn't a question that I could ask you, but
I would say, I feel like sometimes the older generation compares their younger lives to our lives now. Like, I know my grandma, my mom, when I was younger, so-and-so and so. So I agree with Ms. Spees and Ms. Cobb. Like, I feel like the older generation should meet us in the middle, and we should do the same. And, yeah.
I think the goal is that, I think my grandmother, my mother, they want me to have experiences that improve their life, for me to have those same ones and kind of learn from it. I think that's really what it is when the old folks say, oh, when I'm back in my day and this, that, and that, and that. They just really want you to understand that this is what they went through. It made them a better person. It helped them out somewhere in their life, and they want you to get that experience as well. I think that to kind of end the whole generational thing, you know, society loves categories. They love putting labels and, you know, boxing you in into and pigeonholing you into a label or a title or something like that. I don't live my life like that. I don't allow anyone to pigeonhole me into, oh, you're a black female. I'm more than that. Just, you know, so I think we have to approach it from a standpoint of just everyone is an individual. The experiences that you have, and I have are all different. They make us all great. We learn from them, we grow from them, we move on. And that if there is something from your generation or something that is a characteristic from your era, that you just share it with people and try to translate that to the newer generations in terms of for them to get the skill or experience that you want them to have.
I think no matter what age group you're in, the idea is that we all have to work hard for that which we wish to attain. So no matter if you're of a younger age or of an older age, no matter what season you are in your own individual lives, that whole mantra of, you know, in order to obtain something, you have to work hard for it. So I don't think there should be a distinction there. I totally agree with Ms. Cobb that there are experiences that I've had that I would want to share with young people, especially young women, that this would be something to benefit you. And then on the reverse of that, you know, if there's a young person, young woman, who can say to me, well, this has been my experience, and I can too learn something from that young woman, I think that, again, makes us all better.
Right. Well, we have a few minutes left, and I'd like to open this up, see if any of you have any questions for our panelists or for me.
or if you have any comments or ideas that you'd like to share.
My name is Kenyana Bethea. I'm a junior mathematics major from Kinston, North Carolina. And I just want to say that it's really easy to kind of throw away older people because we, you know, a lot of us have that experience with older people where they judge us because of our age. But I think it's important to try to get past that and listen to their experiences because you can really learn a lot. I have an 85-year-old grandmother, and her step-grandchildren have no kind of relationship with her because they're like, oh, she's stubborn, she's this, she's that, and she feels the same way about them. But when I'm there and I'm at her house and I'm talking to her, she has a lot of stories to tell and a lot of experiences that she tells me, and she teaches me a lot of things. And I think it's just really important that we value our older people the same way they should value us.
See, meeting me in the middle.
Okay, so my comment is that I just think more and more people need to understand that ageism is a real thing, and it's experiences from all different ages. Every age is stereotyped or put into a category. And I like how on the panel they discussed how we should meet in the middle, but no one wants to define what the middle is. And I feel like, in my opinion, the middle would be understanding that even though you want to share your experiences, we all get the same type of lesson. It just comes from different experiences. We all realize that if we keep touching something that's hot, maybe we shouldn't touch, you know, we shouldn't keep putting our hands towards the flame. So it's like, I feel like people need to understand that you can't judge someone's story and say, well, you didn't learn it like how I learned it. Regardless, I learned the exact same thing that you learned, whether I learned it from a computer and you learned it from a textbook. So that's all I had to say.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Nisha Gaston. I'm a business administration major from Los Angeles, California. I have a question for Ms. Cobb and for Mrs. Spees. I know you touched a lot on technology and it advancing and it possibly being fearful for older generations. What are some tips that you can give to us as students to be more patient with maybe your colleagues or the staff members who need some assistance or who is struggling with technology? Because I know you only get maybe a short amount of training on certain technologies, and for us, we don't know that. So what's some tips that you have for us to be a little bit more patient or maybe assist them?
I think, yeah, patience is the key, okay? I struggle with this with my own family. And when people hear you have a degree in IT, they think you can fix everything, you know, that they have. Phone, computer, cable TV. You be like, good gracious, mama, I can't do it all, but I'll try. So I just think really be patient with them. If they are struggling with something and you know how to use it, and you can say, hey, Professor such and such, if you use blank, blank, and blank, it'll make your life a little bit easier the first 10 minutes of class in terms of however they're trying to like take attendance or do something. If you feel you can help them, offer your help in a very respectful way, not to insult them like, oh, move over, I got this. Don't do that. But just kind of take that approach with them and show them how it can really improve your learning experience in the classroom, and just kind of take it approach with love that I'm here to just try to help me learn in the best way possible, and this is how I learn, and so if you can help me do that or meet me halfway, it'll just make my life in this class a lot better. Yes,
I think too that patience is the key. I will never say that I know everything about what I'm doing in terms of technology, so I don't mind asking for help. And so as young students, you know, who have had privy to technology all of your lives, as Ms. Cobb has indicated, you know, offer your assistance. But again, if you do it in a respectful manner, to understand that, you know, Mrs. Spees probably just doesn't know how she can, you know, accomplish this a lot easier. You know, show me. And I'm not going to, you know, say, okay, I'm not going to take your advice because you are 25 years younger than I am. But again, I think, you know, if we're willing to assist each other, because technology is not going anywhere, it's just going to keep evolving. And, you know, we just have to be willing to open up and to learn. I know a lot of our community centers offer classes for older people who want to learn about technology. There are some older people who just have no interest in learning anything about technology. And so, you know, my mother is 88 years of age, but she loves seeing her great-grandchildren on FaceTime, who live in other cities and other states. So, you know, she knows that, you know, this can connect me to them even when they can't be in my own home at a given time. So, you know, some, you know, are willing to learn and to share, you know, but others will just, you never get them to the point where they want to learn.
Any more questions?
I'll just add one more comment. That, and I say this to share a piece of information with you. So I am engaged and I have stepchildren. They're 17 years old. They're twins, a boy and a girl. And I always tell them, people say, oh, experience is the best way to learn. And that's not always the case. So if Ms. Spees tells you something, take her word for it. You don't have to go through that experience to know that that's not what I want to do. So never let anyone tell you that, in terms of, you know, if you can just learn from my mistakes and her mistakes and so forth, and your sister's mistakes, do that. You don't have to go touch the stove to know that it's hot. I told you it was hot. Just take my word for it. Trust me. I got the burns to prove it. So in terms of like this whole generational thing, we just want you all to learn from us and not have to go through all of that to get where we saw, where we wanted you to be in the first place. So just take our word for it. We're not here to, you know, mislead you. And the same for you guys. Like if you see me going the wrong way, Ms. Cobb, come here. Let me show you how to teach me, because I don't want to go down the wrong path. And if it'll save me time, energy, and money, we all need to just, you know, take a lesson from that.
All right, well, let's thank our panelists. Oh. And find a question.
Hi, my name is Princess Bush. I'm a freshwoman biology major, psychology minor, and I'm from Orlando, Florida. And oftentimes I hear like the phrase, you know, don't reinvent the wheel. And I was wondering, like, for the panel, do you think that there's things that people have went through or gone through or experienced or had to do in the past that may have contributed to better character, or things that may be lost in the future due to easier access, or maybe some other things that we don't experience or have to go through now?
Very compounded question. Good question, girl. Yeah, so when you say don't reinvent the wheel, they actually are reinventing the wheel. NASA is reinventing a wheel that will allow these, what are they called, probes or machines, to go on Mars and not take as much beating, and it's made from this super aluminum alloy titanium material. So in some cases, you know, there is time for innovation. You know, with this generation, y'all can reinvent the wheel. You can reinvent anything nowadays, but it's also about learning from our past mistakes and failures. So if you look at, it's this book called Where Good Ideas Come From. and I'll give it to Carmen to send out to everyone. It's a really good book. It shows how an idea starts from one little thing that had nothing to do with the end product. And so with that being said, it's like you have to kind of measure and take things slowly, a piece at a time, to see if it's actually worth working towards, if it's worth making some new invention or some new creation or some new anything. So it's just really about taking your time, pacing yourself, and if you can reinvent the wheel, do it. If you can't, don't waste your time doing it.
All right, well, we hit a little overtime, but let's thank our panel once more. And I think that's a nice place to stop.